Paul McCartney has come out and said that he was not responsible for the Beatles' breakup. He said John Lennon, our Johnny, as he referred to him. This from Yahoo News. I didn't instigate the split, Paul McCartney said. That was our Johnny. McCartney, 79, is quoted as saying this in an upcoming episode of the new BBC Radio 4 interview series, This Cultural Life, declaring that the period was, quote, the most difficult period in my life, McCartney said. He felt that the group was still producing pretty good stuff.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, so Abbey Road, Let It Be, not bad, he said. Pretty good stuff. Oh, people would kill to produce music of that quality. He reportedly acknowledges the tensions within the group. His thinking at the time, he said, was this is my band, this is my job, this is my life. So I wanted it to continue. But Lennon, who was murdered in 1980 at the age of 40, wasn't interested in staying at the band. So Paul says the point of it really was that John was making a new life with Yoko. John had always wanted to sort of break loose from society. You know, he was brought up by his Aunt Mimi, who was quite repressive, so he was always looking to break loose. McCartney reportedly says in a series, adding that Lennon found the idea of leaving the band to be quite thrilling. McCartney himself ended up on the receiving end of much of the blame for the band's demise. He and his fellow members, Ringo Starr and George Harrison, were left to pick up the pieces. The idea that he was responsible for the breakup is something he still refutes. He says, stop right there. I am not the person who instigated the split. Oh, no, no, no. John walked into a room one day and said, I'm leaving the Beatles. Is that instigating the split or not? After the breakup, McCartney was constantly asked if it was his decision that ended the group. I had to live with all that because that was what people saw. All I could do was say no. Under new management, the bandmates had to pretend for a few months that they were still a cohesive unit. Paul says it was weird because we all knew it was the end of the Beatles, but we couldn't just walk away. He was so frustrated, he said, that he let the cat out of the bag because he was fed up with hiding it. Around that time, we were having little meetings, and it was horrible, and it was the opposite of what we were. We were musicians, not meeting people that go to meetings. John wanted to go to Amsterdam and lie in bed for a week for peace. He doesn't hold anything against Yoko Ono.
I have never heard anyone blame McCartney for the breakup. In fact, the only person I've ever heard blamed, can you guess?
It's Yoko.
Yoko. Yeah.
Right. Huh. I remember feeling resentful when I would see pictures of the Beatles in studio, like doing Abbey Road, and there was Yoko sitting there as well. And then eventually I started seeing other pictures that showed Linda McCartney in there. So it's, it is what it is. But this is the side note to all that, if you want to call it a god door. So John Lennon was murdered on December the 8th, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, 1980. And I vividly remember where I was and what I was doing. I was playing with my band, and we took a break, and I got a phone call. A friend said, hey, turn on the news. John Lennon was just killed. And I said, no way. I mean, it's like it was impossible. How could that happen? It couldn't happen. And sure enough, it did. And for me, that was a real moment in my life when the idea of mortality and eventually when your life is over, you have to give an account of your life and you're going to be judged and you're going to go either to heaven or hell. It was one of those moments, Cyrus, I kid you not, when that whole message of the gospel became really real to me. Because John Lennon and the Beatles is like, these guys are superhuman. They're not going to get old. They're not going to die. They're just going to sort of be around forever, which of course is ludicrous. But it was a powerful moment for me, oddly enough, when John Lennon was murdered, to suddenly realize this life is fleeting. And all the fame and the money and the women and the Rolls Royces and the cool clothing and the houses in different parts of the world, and you can have anything you want whenever you want it. That all goes away when you die. And John Lennon had to give an account to the Lord for his life. He had to settle up accounts. He had to have his exit interview. And if you're a bibliophile and have read much of anything about the Beatles, you know that certainly from about 1960, when they first really started playing music, until his death in 1980, for that 20-year span, I mean, John Lennon wasn't going to adoration or praying the rosary. He was living that jet-set rock and roll lifestyle with everything that included. So I hope he made it. I really do. Wouldn't that be amazing, Cyrus? You get into heaven and you find, hey, that's John Lennon. He made it to heaven. Look at him. Or Paul McCartney comes over and says, hey, thanks for listening to all the music. That's probably a quasi-Australian accent.
Yeah, I think you abandoned it after the first word.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Lennon comes up and tells you.
We were 4 guys. We were just a band who made it very, very big, that's all.
That's all. So anyway, so that's why the Paul McCartney, Beatles breaking up, I was all leading to the issue of John Lennon being murdered as he was. He was shot to death, for those who don't know. And it was shocking, but it was very revelatory. For me, at least. I think a lot of other people had a similar experience where you realize that this is fame and pleasure and fortune and all these other things. It's fleeting and it's not permanent.
We put these people up on a pedestal and we pretend that they're not mortal. Mm-hmm. They're bigger than life.
That's a good way to put it. And isn't it true that we, being sort of the pop music consuming culture that we are, we tend to project onto these people our own desires in the things that, vicariously we would like to have at a carnal level, at a worldly level. In terms of heavenly issues, those things don't matter a bit. Platinum records, they don't matter a bit. How many followers you have on Twitter don't matter a bit. None of those things really matter in an eternal sense. But from a worldly standpoint, it's easy to project onto these famous celebrities those things that we would like, or we think we would like to have those things. John Lennon was one of the most miserable people for the last 10 years of his life. He was not a happy guy. And he went from one emotional crisis to another, and the drugs, and he got cleaned up toward the end. But his life wasn't happy from everything that I can read. It wasn't joyful. And I hope he made it. But something to think about. Whenever you hear about a celebrity, Tom Petty, Prince, all the people that we've lost recently at the peak of their stardom with all of their fame and fortune, and none of it goes with them. It's just, you hit reset and they go right back to zero. And ultimately, the only things that you'll leave this world with at the end of your life are your sins and your love. And if you are a follower of Jesus and you're close to him and you love him, then your sins are going to be forgiven and you'll spend eternity with God in heaven. Please God that that's true for many, many people. But ultimately, that's all you take with you. It's what you've done and the love that you have for God. That's all you take. And the rest of it's going to be left for other people. So that's why Jesus said so often things like, lay up treasure in heaven, because there the moth cannot eat it, and the robber cannot steal it, and the rust cannot corrode it. That's treasure that's permanent, and it's going to be there for you when you get there. And how do you lay up treasure in heaven? Well, give alms, all the things that Jesus talked about in Matthew 25, feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, clothe the naked, visit the imprisoned, welcome the stranger, be a good father, be a good mother, be a good husband, be a good wife, be a good student. And I don't mean in terms of getting good grades necessarily. That's not that important to God, but to live a good life, to pursue virtue, and to avoid sin. That's how you lay up treasure in heaven. That's how you do it. Gold records will not translate into treasure in heaven.
For more of The Patrick Madrid Show, visit relevantradio.com/Patrick.